The camera pans over the dark ruins of an ancient alien world, the eerie glow of the Nexus key illuminating the crumbling stone walls. The sound of a heartbeat quickens as an ominous voice echoes through the chamber. "You think you can stop me?" Suddenly, a shadowy figure emerges from the darkness, its red eyes locking onto the two explorers, Derek and Lyra. The ground trembles beneath their feet. Lyra whispers, her voice filled with dread. "The darkness has found us." The Nexus key pulses with a blinding light as Derek reaches for it. But before he can touch it, "Run!" The ground cracks open and an explosion shakes the chamber. Will Derek and Lyra survive? The screen fades to black as an ominous shadow looms overhead. The fate of two species rests in their hands. Will they unlock the secrets of the Starwalkers before it's too late? The screen flashes with the words, "Discover the truth, fight the darkness." If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. Derek Foster's boots made soft, echoing sounds as he walked through the ancient ruins of Viralon, a distant planet far from Earth. He had been a part of many expeditions, but this one was different. There was something about these ruins that felt almost alive. The walls, covered in strange markings, seemed to hum with energy, whispering secrets that had been locked away for millennia. The air was thick with dust, and every step he took disturbed centuries of peace. His scanner beeped, indicating unusual readings from deep within the structure. "We're not alone here," Derek muttered to himself, adjusting his backpack as he continued down the crumbling stone hallways. The sun from Viralon's twin moons filtered through the cracks in the stone, casting an eerie glow on the ancient symbols that lined the walls. The markings seemed familiar, but Derek couldn't quite place them. He was an expert in ancient civilizations, but these ruins were like nothing he had ever encountered. As he moved deeper into the ruins, the air grew heavier. It felt as though the past was pressing in on him, urging him to discover something that had been hidden for too long. His handheld scanner showed a concentration of energy, stronger the deeper he went. "This doesn't make sense," Derek whispered, his brow furrowing. "These readings are off the charts." He rounded a corner and stopped dead in his tracks. Standing before him was a figure unlike any he had ever seen. She was tall, her skin glowing in the faint light, a rich shade of green that seemed to shimmer as though it was alive. Her hair, long and flowing, had a bluish hue that seemed to change in the light. She was dressed in a flowing gown made of some kind of shimmering fabric, and her amber eyes were wide with surprise as they locked onto Derek's. For a moment, neither of them moved. Derek's mind raced. Who was she? How had she gotten here? He had expected to find only remnants of an ancient civilization, not a living being, but there she was, standing in front of him as though she had been waiting for him. "I'm sorry," Derek said, his voice almost a whisper. He instinctively bent down and helped her retrieve a large, ancient book she had dropped. It was made of some sort of thick, weathered material, its pages curled with age. "I didn't mean to startle you." The alien woman didn't respond right away. Instead, she stared at him with an intensity that made Derek feel like she was trying to understand something beyond the surface. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft but full of awe. "You speak the lost language of our ancestors?" she asked, her words strange yet familiar. She was speaking in a language Derek could understand, but one that he had never heard before. It was ancient, beautiful, and full of mystery. Derek blinked in confusion. "What? I'm speaking English," he said slowly, his eyes searching her face for any sign of recognition. Standard Earth English. The woman's expression shifted from surprise to something deeper. "No," she breathed, her voice trembling with disbelief. "You speak ancestral Nari, the sacred tongue of my people's forebears. It has been dead for millennia. Only a handful of scholars can even read it anymore." Derek's heart skipped a beat. He glanced down at the book she held in her hands, the one that seemed to have sparked this strange interaction. He leaned closer, scanning the symbols on the pages. To his surprise, he could read some of it, though it didn't make any sense. The symbols were a mix of something alien and the English alphabet. This is impossible, Derek muttered under his breath, running his fingers through his messy hair. How can this be? I can understand it. The alien woman, whose name he learned was Lyra, still stared at him with a mixture of disbelief and wonder. She opened the book to reveal more pages, her fingers tracing the glowing text. How is this possible? She asked, still in awe. My people have searched for answers about our past, but we never expected this. Derek stepped back, trying to make sense of what was happening. I have no idea, he admitted, his voice shaky. But I think we've just stumbled onto something much bigger than either of us could have imagined. He glanced at Lyra, feeling a strange connection forming between them. This isn't just about archaeology, he continued. This is about history, fate, and something far more important. Lyra nodded, her amber eyes still wide. She could feel the pull of the ancient book in her hands, the weight of centuries of knowledge that had been lost to time. These ruins, she said softly, looking around the chamber with reverence. They're not just archaeological sites. They are the last known repositories of our ancestors' knowledge. Everything we've been searching for. It's here. The Star Walkers, Derek said, remembering the name that had been mentioned in the texts he had scanned. The legends. The ancient beings who once bridged the gap between our peoples. Lyra's gaze softened as she nodded. Yes, she replied. But there's more. The texts speak of a great darkness that our ancestors faced, one that threatens both our species. The Star Walkers. They knew that the only way to overcome it was by uniting the human and Nalari races once again. Derek felt a chill run down his spine. The ancient texts, the strange language, the ruins. It all began to make sense in a way he couldn't explain. And you think this connection we have is the key? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Lyra didn't answer immediately. Instead, she closed the book and looked at Derek with a seriousness that matched the gravity of the situation. I think, she said slowly, that we are part of something much larger than ourselves, and we have a responsibility to uncover what's hidden here before it's too late. As Derek stood there, staring into Lyra's amber eyes, he realized that this was only the beginning. Whatever had drawn him to this planet, to these ruins, it wasn't a coincidence. And now, with Lyra at his side, he was ready to uncover the truth of their shared history, no matter what dangers lay ahead. Derek and Lyra stood in the chamber, the faint hum of ancient energy swirling around them. The atmosphere was thick, with the weight of history, as if the ruins themselves were alive, waiting for their story to be told. Derek couldn't help but feel the enormity of the moment, the realization that what he had stumbled upon was far more than just an archaeological dig. This was destiny, something that had been set in motion long before he ever set foot on Viralon. So, Derek began, his voice breaking the silence. What now? Lyra looked at him, her amber eyes glowing with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. She seemed deep in thought, weighing the implications of their discovery. Now we uncover the truth, she replied, her voice steady. We have the key to something far greater than either of us could have imagined. Derek nodded, though he still felt a sense of disbelief. How had he, an Earth archaeologist, ended up in this remote alien ruin, speaking an ancient language that had been dead for millennia? How had he and Lyra, a Nalari linguist, been brought together by fate? It was as though the universe itself had conspired to guide them to this moment. The chamber around them was filled with artifacts, pieces of technology, and ancient texts that spoke of a time long past. The walls were covered in intricate carvings that depicted scenes of a united people, humans and Nalari side by side, fighting against a cosmic threat. But there were also signs of war, symbols of separation, of two worlds torn apart by a force beyond their control. It was clear that the Star Walkers, the ancient beings who had once bridged the gap between humanity and the Nalari, had known this day would come. Lyra's fingers traced the symbols on the wall, her expression one of reverence. These carvings tell the story of our people's rise and fall, she said softly. The Star Walkers were more than just our ancestors. They were beings of incredible power, capable of shaping the very fabric of the universe. They knew the darkness was coming and they tried to stop it, but she paused, her voice faltering. They failed. Failed? Derek repeated, his brow furrowed. But we're still here. Humanity and the Nalari still exist. Yes, Lyra said, her gaze shifting to the ancient text in her hands. But at what cost? The Starwalkers believed that the only way to defeat the darkness was to separate their species into two branches, humans and Nalari, so that each could evolve in different ways, developing strengths that would eventually be able to unite and fight the coming force. They believed that only by separating us could we ultimately come together and overcome the darkness. Derek absorbed her words, trying to make sense of the complex history unfolding before him. So, they engineered our species to be compatible? Lyra nodded. Yes, they left us a map, a blueprint of sorts, for our reunification. They encoded the language of our ancestors into our very genetic code, ensuring that when the time was right, we would find each other. We would speak the same language, and together, we would face the darkness. Derek felt a strange sensation wash over him, a deep sense of connection to something beyond his understanding. It was as though the very fabric of his being was resonating with the truth of what Lyra had said. The language he spoke, the ancient tongue of the Nalari, it wasn't just a coincidence. It was a link, a bridge between two species that had been separated for thousands of years. But how do we unlock this power? Derek asked, his voice full of urgency. How do we stop the darkness? Lyra's eyes darkened and she turned to face him, a look of determination in her gaze. That's what we need to find out. The Starwalkers believed that the Nexus Key would unlock the power we need to unite our species. It's an artifact hidden somewhere deep within these ruins that holds the key to our future. We must find it before anyone else does. Anyone else? Derek repeated, his heart racing. Who else is looking for this key? Lyra hesitated, then answered quietly. There are others who know about the key, those who want to use its power for their own gain. There are factions, both human and Nalari, who believe that the key can be used to gain control over the universe. But they don't understand its true purpose. They're blinded by their desire for power. Derek felt a chill run down his spine. He had always known that archaeology was about more than just uncovering the past. It was about understanding the forces that shaped the present and future. But this was different. This wasn't just about history. It was about survival. The stakes were higher than he could have ever imagined. So what do we do now? Derek asked, his voice steady but filled with purpose. Lyra smiled, a hint of mischief in her eyes. Now, we find the key, and we make sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. The two of them set off through the ruins, their footsteps echoing through the corridors as they moved deeper into the heart of the ancient structure. With every step, the energy readings on Derek's scanner grew stronger, as if the very walls were guiding them toward their goal. The deeper they went, the more Derek could feel a strange pull, an energy that seemed to call to him, urging him forward. As they reached the center of the ruins, they found themselves standing in front of a massive door, covered in intricate symbols that seemed to pulse with life. Lyra stepped forward, her fingers tracing the markings on the door. This is it, she said, her voice filled with awe. The Nexus Chamber. This is where the key is hidden. Derek took a deep breath, his heart pounding in his chest. He had come this far, and now there was no turning back. Let's do it, he said, his voice filled with resolve. Together, they activated the mechanism that opened the door, and as it creaked open, they were greeted by a sight that took their breath away. Inside, the chamber was filled with glowing crystals, each one radiating a soft, otherworldly light. At the center of the room, on a pedestal, sat the Nexus Key, a small, intricate object that seemed to hum with energy. We found it, Lyra whispered, her voice filled with wonder. But as they stepped forward to claim the key, the ground beneath them began to tremble. A low rumble filled the air, and the walls seemed to shift and change. Something was wrong. We need to get out of here, Derek said urgently, his heart racing. Now. But it was too late. The darkness had already found them. The ground trembled beneath their feet as Derek and Lyra turned to face the shifting walls of the chamber. The air felt thick with a strange energy, as if the very ruins were alive, watching them. The hum of the Nexus key seemed to grow louder, vibrating in the very marrow of Derek's bones. Lyra's face was pale, her amber, eyes wide with a mixture of awe and fear. "What's happening?" Derek asked, his voice tight with panic. Lyra didn't answer immediately. Instead, she scanned the chamber with a look of horror. "This isn't supposed to happen," she muttered. "The key. It was meant to activate only when we were ready. But something's wrong. It's triggering an ancient defense mechanism." Before Derek could respond, the walls around them began to shift. Massive stone slabs slid into place, sealing off their exit. The air grew colder, and the shadows in the room seemed to deepen. Derek's heart raced as he realized that they were trapped. The Nexus key was glowing brighter now, casting eerie shadows on the walls. "We need to leave now," Derek urged, grabbing Lyra's arm. But Lyra remained rooted to the spot, staring at the pedestal where the Nexus key sat. "We can't leave yet," she whispered. This is what the Starwalkers left behind. This is the key to our survival. If we leave now, we risk it falling into the wrong hands." Derek didn't have time to argue. A low, guttural growl echoed through the chamber, sending a chill down his spine. He turned to see something emerge from the shadows, a figure, tall and cloaked in darkness, with glowing red eyes. Its face was obscured by a helmet, but its presence radiated power and malevolence. The darkness itself seemed to gather around it, twisting like smoke. "We are not alone," Lyra murmured, her voice trembling. The figure took a step forward, and the ground beneath it seemed to crack and shift. Derek could feel the weight of its presence pressing down on him. He instinctively reached for his weapon, but Lyra's hand stopped him. "It's too late for that," she said softly. "This is no ordinary enemy. This is the darkness." "The darkness?" Derek repeated, confusion clouding his thoughts. "What do you mean?" "The darkness isn't just a force," Lyra explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's an entity, an ancient being that thrives on chaos, division, and fear. It's been manipulating our species for thousands of years, keeping us apart. The Starwalkers knew it would return, and they left the Nexus key as a way to fight it. But the key was never meant to be used alone." As Lyra spoke, the figure in the shadow stepped closer, its eyes locking onto hers. Derek could feel the temperature drop even further, as if the very air had been sucked out of the room. The darkness radiated an almost tangible sense of hatred, and Derek's heart pounded in his chest. "You think you can stop me?" The figure's voice was cold and cruel, reverberating through the chamber like a death knell. "You think your weak alliance can overcome the inevitable?" Lyra stepped forward, her gaze never leaving the figure. "We don't seek to stop you. We seek to understand you. To bring unity, not division." The figure laughed, the sound echoing off the walls like the screech of nails on glass. "Unity? There can be no unity. You are too different, too divided. Your peoples will never stand together." "You're wrong," Lyra replied, her voice steady now as if she had found a new strength. "The Starwalkers knew this. They left us a path, a way for us to overcome the darkness. But that path requires more than just knowledge. It requires trust. It requires connection." Derek was still trying to make sense of everything, but Lyra's words stirred something deep within him. He looked at her, seeing the determination in her eyes, the belief that they could overcome this, and in that moment, he realized that their bond, their shared connection, was the key to everything. The darkness shifted, its form beginning to take shape, a massive, shadowy entity that loomed over them. It extended its hand, and the air crackled, with an ominous energy. "You think your connection can stop me?" it hissed. "I have watched your species fall for millennia. You are weak, divided, You will never defeat me. We don't need to defeat you, Lyra said, her voice growing stronger. We need to understand you. Because as long as we remain divided, you will continue to feed on our fear. But together, we can break the cycle. Together we can overcome you. Derek took a deep breath, stepping forward to stand beside Lyra. He didn't know what would happen next, but he knew one thing. He wasn't going to let her face this alone. We're not afraid of you, he said, his voice steady. We've been through too much to let fear control us. The darkness recoiled, its form shifting and writhing as if it were in pain. You think you are ready? It growled. You think your bond can withstand the power of the universe itself? Lyra reached out, placing her hand on the nexus key, her fingers brushing the glowing surface. Our bond is more than just a connection. It's the key to understanding, to breaking the chains of separation. The Starwalkers designed us for this moment, for this very purpose. Suddenly, the chamber was filled with a blinding light, and Derek felt an overwhelming surge of energy course through him. It was as if the very essence of the universe was flooding his veins, igniting his mind and soul. Lyra's eyes shone with an intense light, and Derek could feel her thoughts, her emotions, intertwining with his. They were no longer two separate beings, they were one. Together, Lyra whispered, her voice now full of power. We can defeat you. The darkness screamed, its form crumbling under the weight of their combined energy. The light from the nexus key grew brighter, filling the entire chamber with warmth and strength. The shadows that had once held them captive began to disintegrate, vanishing into the air like smoke in the wind. Derek felt a sense of peace wash over him, as if the very fabric of reality had been altered. He looked at Lyra, seeing her in a new light. She wasn't just a companion. She was his equal, his partner. Together, they had unlocked a power that neither of them fully understood, but one that could change the universe. We've done it, Derek said, his voice filled with awe. We've stopped the darkness. Lyra smiled, her amber eyes gleaming with triumph. No, she replied softly. We've just begun. This is only the beginning of our journey. As the last remnants of the darkness faded away, Derek and Lyra stood in the heart of the Nexus chamber, their bond stronger than ever. The path ahead was uncertain, but together, they knew they could face anything. The universe had been shaped by the past, but now, it was their turn to shape the future. And as they left the chamber, stepping into the unknown, they knew that their journey was far from over. The chamber's walls had finally quieted, the hum of the Nexus key now a distant echo in Derek's ears. The darkness, though not fully erased, had been momentarily defeated, but Derek knew that the battle wasn't over, not by a long shot. As the last remnants of the shadowy force evaporated into nothingness, a strange calm washed over him, but it was fleeting. There was still much to uncover, and their journey was far from complete. We did it, Derek said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. He turned to look at Lyra, who was standing beside him, her gaze fixed on the now still Nexus key. Her face, lit by the soft glow of the artifact, showed no signs of triumph. Instead, there was a focused intensity in her eyes, as if she was already thinking about the next step in their journey. Yes, Lyra said, her voice calm but tinged with determination. We stopped the darkness, but it's only a part of what we're meant to do. We've unlocked the first piece of the puzzle, but there's more waiting for us. We have a responsibility to finish what the Starwalkers began. Derek nodded, his mind racing. The Nexus key had done its part, revealing the power within their shared connection. But they both knew that they couldn't simply rely on the key. The Starwalkers' legacy had been built on more than just artifacts. It had been built on understanding, unity, and trust between species. The key was only the beginning. Their connection, the bond they shared, had to be the true force that guided them forward. The Starwalkers wanted us to unite, Derek said thoughtfully, glancing at the intricate symbols that lined the walls of the chamber. To bring humans and Nalari together to fight the darkness, but they also left behind other pieces of the puzzle, other places where our connection can grow stronger. Exactly, Lyra replied. The Nexus key is only one part of a greater design. It leads us to other sites, other places of power, where we can unlock more of our potential. But we have to be careful. There are others who want to use this power for their own gain, and we can't let them stop us. Derek felt a chill run down his spine. He had known from the start that their journey would be dangerous, but the magnitude of what Lyra was saying made the threat feel more real than ever. They were no longer just seeking answers. They were now the targets of those who would stop at nothing to control the Starwalker's legacy. So what's next? Derek asked, his voice steady but with a hint of urgency. Where do we go from here? Lyra looked at him, her eyes gleaming with resolve. There's a hidden facility on the moon of Viralon, she said. The Starwalkers built it long ago, and it contains the next piece of the puzzle. The Nexus archives, the final repository of their knowledge, is there. If we can find it, we'll have the final key to defeating the darkness once and for all. Derek's heart skipped a beat. The moon of Viralon? He had heard rumors of a secret facility hidden beneath its surface, but no one had ever confirmed its existence. It was a place that even the most seasoned explorers had written off as myth. But now, with Lyra's words echoing in his mind, he knew it wasn't a myth at all. How do we get there? Derek asked, his voice filled with determination. Lyra gave him a small smile. We have a ship, she said, her fingers brushing the control panel in front of her. The room seemed to respond to her touch, lights flickering to life as a hidden door slid open. Inside, a sleek, shimmering vessel stood ready, its hull gleaming in the dim light of the chamber. We're going to need all the help we can get, Derek said, his eyes fixed on the ship. If we're going to stop this, we can't do it alone. Lyra nodded in agreement, her face serious once again. I agree. We'll need to gather allies, those who understand the importance of what we're doing, humans and Nalari alike. The darkness is a force that thrives on division. We can't afford to let it separate us any longer. Derek followed Lyra into the ship, his mind racing with everything they had uncovered. The facility on the moon, the Nexus archives, everything was falling into place, but there were still so many unknowns. Who else would they encounter on their journey? What dangers lay ahead? But in that moment, one thing was clear. He wasn't going to let anything stop them. Not now. Not when they were so close to the truth. As the ship's systems powered up, a soft hum filled the air. Derek felt the vibration under his feet as the vessel prepared for takeoff. He glanced at Lyra, who was already seated at the controls, her fingers moving with practiced ease over the interface. Her eyes were fixed on the stars beyond the ship's windows, but there was a quiet determination in her gaze. We're ready, she said, her voice calm. Hold on tight, Derek. This is just the beginning. With that, the ship surged forward, blasting through the atmosphere of Viralon and into the vast expanse of space. As they soared toward the moon, Derek couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. They were no longer just two individuals on a mission. They were part of something greater, a story that had been written in the stars long before they had ever met. As the ship left Viralon's orbit and headed toward the moon, Derek glanced out the window, watching the planet slowly fade into the distance. He didn't know what awaited them, but he knew one thing for sure. Whatever happened next, they were in this together. The journey ahead was uncertain, but they had the power to shape it. We're going to find the Nexus archives, Derek said quietly, more to himself than to Lyra, and we're going to stop the darkness. Lyra's voice came softly in reply. Together we will. The ship accelerated, its destination now clear. They were headed toward a new chapter in their journey, one that would test their strength, their bond, and their understanding of the universe itself. But no matter what they encountered, they knew they would face it as partners, united in their purpose. As the moon loomed closer, the darkness that had followed them for so long seemed to recede, pushed back by the light of their shared connection. But Derek knew that the real battle was just beginning. The path forward would be filled with challenges, but they had already proven that together they could overcome anything. The future was uncertain, but as long as they stood side by side, nothing could break the bond they had forged. Their journey was only beginning.